Hey, good evening, everyone. I hope you're excited for today's session. We are going to be doing a hands-on session, but at the same time, you're also going to learn about Azure SQL databases. So we'll just wait for a few minutes to log in. In the meanwhile, for those who are just joining us, make sure you have your username and password because that's what we are going to use for today's session. If anybody hasn't received an email from me, uh, I hope all of you registered on that form. So I kind of use that email address to kind of register all of you guys. So let me know if you don't have it. I'll see if I can recycle some usernames and passwords for you to get started with. Hey, Priyanka. So there are two credentials that I've given you. So first is the Azure SQL one, the Azure one. That's going to get you into Azure. So just navigate to portal.azure.com and register with the username and password that I've given you. You can change your password to whatever you want. So at least that will get you started. Anybody who doesn't have a username password, let me post a link on the channel so you guys have it as well. Just give me one moment. So let me post the link here. You can use this to log in into your Azure portal with the username password that I've given you. Rest, I will walk you through that. So let's just give about another 5 minutes. In the meanwhile, let me know if you have any questions or anything that you want to go ahead and ask. Priyanka, you will have to use my credentials because I've configured the whole Azure game, Azure SQL Server, configured pre-ready, ready to use. The game has been configured on there. So if you want to use, feel free, but you won't have access to the game on the SQL Server. So for now, just use my credentials, and most of you have reader access, so you can practically do anything. Just don't abuse the system. This is something that I'll end up with a huge cost. So yeah. Besides that, feel free to have fun on the system. Anybody who doesn't have the Azure credentials, Deepak, what link are you referring to? Let me just paste the Azure portal link in there. The link is no, the Azure credential. Um, you should have received an email. So I had asked for a registration. So whoever registered on that email should have received a username and password. So that's the credentials are all there. Are there anyone who don't have it? So if you have not registered, there's a very good chance that you don't have the credentials. All right. So Ashutosh is logged in. Um, Connie, did you get the email, Connie? I don't see your name registered here. Maybe I missed it. Uh, Likely not. Connie, you should have gotten your email as well. I have sent it to your Gmail. Anybody who doesn't have the credentials? No need. You don't need your credit card for login. Um, Connie, let me give me 1 minute. Let me send you the email again. Um, I have sent it for sure. That much I know. Uh, Connie, I've sent it again. Maybe check in the spam. Maybe it's gone into the spam folder. You don't need any credit card information. You are essentially using my account. So all of you have, I think I've given you all contributor access. So you can kind of play around with the databases and everything. So as we kind of go along, right, you will be able to play along onto my Azure. So, for now, don't break anything. I'll give you enough time to, play around and break anything that you wish to break. So for now, we'll just kind of go on and play the game, and then as you kind of run through, we'll kind of teach you the concepts of what you have been doing and how to kind of think about Azure SQL Database. Deepak, I don't have. When did you register? Because if you registered, at least an hour back, I would have given you the credentials. So if you don't have it, then I'll have to create one for you. Did you register online? No. So if you registered through Meetup, that's what I had on the Meetup. You had to kind of go on a separate link and register for it. Otherwise, it's very difficult to share credentials on the Meetup link because Meetup doesn't share the email addresses for obvious reasons. So that's why I had a separate link for registration. So do one thing. We'll get started, and as people start to play around the system. Go on the link. I will give it to you in a moment, and just re-register so I can share the credentials with you. Right. Let me paste the link for those who have not registered on this. So I'm sending you the forms link, Deepak. Just make sure that you register on this. All right. So I think we have enough people in the session now. So everybody has access to Azure. Do you have access to my email? Are you logged in? I can do a quick check to see who all are logged in. If not, then I can share, reuse. I have just two users logged in at the moment. Uh, All right. So, just wait for a moment. Do you guys want to start the game, or should I go into the theory of the SQL and what is SQL databases and everything? What do you guys want to do first? Should I jump onto the game? All right, let's get logged on to the game. So at least we guys will be able to kind of play it, and let's go from there. So when you log in, right, you will have access to. You won't have recent resources because I'm kind of logged in using the same thing. So most likely you will have to go to SQL databases, and in SQL databases you will see a database called Silver, and in that you will be able to kind of log in through. So the way to kind of log in into this is we are, of course you can set up your system. You can kind of work through that. But what we are going to go through is your query editor. Now, I would have given you credentials for your query editor itself. So log in using uh, the user credentials that are there for SQL, not the Azure one, right? So make sure you're using the correct one, right? And then once you log in, you will have this interface where you will see the tables on the left hand side and your query and the results things as well. So let me know if anybody is stuck on the basic queries. Are you able to log in into SQL? I cannot log in using SQL credentials. Okay, hold on. Let me see if I can log in using yours. Uh, your password is working fine. So make sure you're not putting any space or anything. Oh, okay. Hold on. Um, all right. Try again. I just opened up your firewalls. All right. Sorry, I completely missed out on setting the firewall. My bad. All right. So looks like everybody is logged in. Ashutosh, TH, all set with the login. Uh, So when you log in onto the portal, you will just see something like this on the top. If you don't see SQL databases, go to SQL databases, and then you will be able to see the silver murder mystery silver one. All right. So just get into here and go to query editor and log in using your username password that I shared with you over the email. All right. Everybody logged in? Connie, Ashutosh, all logged in. Shall we move on? All right. So what we are going to do in this game is there there's a city called SQL City, and what you will notice in there is a murder that has happened, right? And now police has kind of given access to a lot of databases that you have to essentially query and find out who that culprit is going to be. So over there, we are going to kind of work through a lot of those scenarios where we will learn one how to use SQL. And as you kind of work through this, right, I'll kind of show you, how we can tune performance tuning, how we can start to mask the data, and a lot of other things that come by default out of a managed SQL databases itself. All right. So let's get started, right? So the first thing that you're going to see is expand on the tables, and you will see something that's called the crime scene report, right? So let's run a query. Just click on the three dots and select top 1,000 rows, right? So this will essentially write a very, very simple query for you, and you will see dates, you will see the type, you will see description and the city where it has happened, right? So the murder has happened in SQL City. So now you have to find out, when did this murder happen, and what is the description that we should be looking out for. Are you guys with me so far? All right. So the date over here. So what we'll try to do is we will just say select. We just want to see the description. All right. Where the date is. Sorry, we have to convert it because I had converted everything into varchar, and we will look at the date, which is 2018. Um, 1st January 15. Right. Let's run this query. Right. So there were quite a few things that were there, and if you kind of look through this, again, there is a lot of data that you have to work with. So let's add another one where we say um, we are going to convert the data, and the city is SQL City. Right. So now you have two of these things, and you can see like your third query results is like, oh, there are two security footage shows that there were two witnesses. The first witness lives on the lost house of Northwestern Drive. The second witness named Dana Mills lives somewhere in the Franklin Avenue. Okay. So now you have gotten a clue that, all right, you have to go and kind of find out who these witnesses are, and get some resolution from them, right? So you will have to. Am I not sharing? Hold on. All right. So what we are going to do? Should I start from scratch again? All right. So has everybody logged in into their data sets, and on the tables you can see a few of these data sets? Let me see if I can do one more. Uh, Hopefully this is big enough. Can you guys see it now? Is this better than before? All right. So let's start over from beginning. So on your left hand side, you will see table views and stored procedure. So on the tables one, there are a lot of these tables that today you will essentially get to use. So the first thing that we are going to look at it is there was a murder that happened in the SQL city, and you have to find out, what was the crime scene report associated with that. So as we kind of investigate that, right, let's select the first top 100 rows. The way to do it is click on the three buttons, three dots that you see. You will get the first option, which will say select top 1000 rows. And it will essentially write a quick query for you and run it for you, and you will be able to see a few of these things. So there are a lot of these data that's there where you have date, type, description, city, as well. And what we need to do is find out the city, which is SQL city. The date is 2018, 1st of January, 15th of January. So you will write 201801. So to write the query, right, because a lot of these data are stored as varchar, so you need to kind of convert it so that it can do a string type of comparison. So let's start off with that, right? So I'm going to say select description from. So I have to tell which schema I'm using and which table I'm using. So we are going to first use the crime scene report, and I'll give the where clause. Where clause tells me is only give me the rows that match a particular condition. So over here I have two conditions. One, I'm saying that date should be 2018, 1st January 2015. So it's stored as a string. So I'm kind of converting that and looking at it. The other one is city. So I'm storing the city as SQL city, right? So now I'm just looking at give me all the rows that match these two criteria, right? And that's what I need to do. And I'm kind of just filtering out the rows that are matching those things. So I see two of those scenes. So I have Hamilton, which says this. Then I have a report not found, and the third one, which looks like something that I would use, is in my screen the font is very low. So over here, essentially, it tells you two witnesses that were there, and those are the two witnesses that we have to go out and investigate. All right. Are you guys with me on running the query so far? All right. So once you have this, right? So now essentially you'll have to go and find out, who those witnesses are, right? So either you can jump on to the table, interview table, right? So let's look at what's contained in the interview table. So let's again do select delta.interview and pick select top 1000 rows. All right. So what you have is person ID and you have transcript. So so most likely the data is sitting in there, but you will essentially we need to find out what is the person ID. So for person ID, what tables do you think you will use from the ones that you have on the left hand side? Any ideas? Which table will you use? Person. All right. So let's query person and see what results do we get. So let's run again. Let's do the same thing. Delta.person, click on it, select top 100, 1000 rows, and let's run to see what you get. So I do start to see that, okay, I can get IDs of the people. I have the name, I have the address, and I have some of the things which is called social security number, right? Which is, I have a reason for kind of putting this, but these are, think of it, if you're from Singapore, think of it as your FIN ID. Or if you're from India, think of that as your Aadhaar card number or passport numbers, right? Which are very, very unique identifiers to you, which, if accessed by public, could be problematic, right? So, in SQL, right now you can see that data set again because I've kind of given you access. But later on, I'll show you that, you can essentially mask these sort of things so that even accidentally people don't have access to this data. So you can mask confidential level information and make sure that people who have no authority to kind of access it, even though they have access to the table, don't have access to such sort of confidential data as we go along. All right. But again, coming back to our query that we had before, right? We had a query which said, I had somebody who lived on Northwestern Drive. So why don't you kind of write a query? I'll let you kind of figure it out and select which is the ID of the person that lives on Frankel Avenue. On the Northwestern Drive. All right. So I'll give you 5 minutes to kind of just play around with this, and then I can give you the solution. Don't forget to convert your data because unfortunately, a bug in my code required me to kind of change everything into this var chart. So this becomes an unfortunate scenario of kind of working through this. So I have Northwestern Drive, which is what I'm going to copy. Right. So again, if you're not familiar with SQL, what I'm saying it is select star, which means I'm saying that select everything from this table called schema is delta and person, where wherever the address name matches Northwestern Drive, give me all the results, right? So we are selecting everything, and I do find that there are quite a few of them that are matching this criteria. All right, so now that's a problem, right? Because I have to kind of go back and match it with the interview itself. Are you getting the same answers as me? Now, if I wanted to sort it by address numbers, or for that matter, IDs as well, right, I could also do order by, and I can select the field that I wanted to be sorted by, right? And if I wanted it in a descending, I would give a word which is called descending. So DESC. That's a keyword for making it descending. So now I've gotten all my data, which is sorted by address numbers in a descending order. So if you don't put it in descending format, your default is going to be an ascending format. You guys with me so far? All right. Now you will see that, okay, there are a lot of these uh, IDs that match up. All right, whether it's ascending or descending, and essentially what this requires is that for each of those IDs, we go and look at the interview of that person, right? So I'll keep this query open. I had this interview piece opened up as well, and I will put another clause in the interview where I will say convert person ID. And what was my first person ID over here? Uh, I can pick 899,906. So I'm going back and putting in a query 899,906. And let's run and see what transcript do I get. There's no ID with that person itself. Let's try another one. Um, doesn't seem to be any decent thing. So now I have a lot of these things, which are essentially what I want to do is keep joining, keep taking the IDs from this table and matching it to that, right? So if you're not familiar with another SQL format, then essentially what I could do is construct a join. So I would say that, hey, join these two tables, right, and select only the ones where those IDs match up, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something which we called left join, which means I'll keep the left table as my base, right? And I will say, again, which table I'm going to look is my interview, right? Because that's a table that I'm really interested in. And I have to give on how am I going to match it. So I have interview. Again, I think I need this whole thing. Interview.id. where it matches with this delta person.id. Sorry. Uh, Let me remove the schema. Ah, looks like I made. Uh, okay, let me just look up what is the query I wrote. Let me remove order by, left join. This should be correct. It looks like I'm missing something. Let's run both and see. Alright, let me try another query separately. Um, let's try this one. Ah, simple error. All right, so here we go. So over here, sorry, it was my bad. I was using the wrong IDs in there. Um, no, I was using the wrong ID, so I kind of wrote it incorrectly, and now I can put in my clause where, sorry, I need to convert. person. And then I have his address. Sorry, what was the previous one? The street name is equal to the Northwestern Drive. All right, so now I have all the IDs of people which I've joined in with the person, and essentially you can see its transcript and those IDs of the people, and we have matched it against everybody who's living on Northwestern Drive itself. Right. So now if we scroll and see, doesn't seem like, although my screen is fairly small, uh, you can scroll down and see. Um, it doesn't look like most of them have, except for the last one. Looks like, oh, there's one guy called Morty Shapiro who sees that there was a gunshot, and there was a membership number which was on the bag, which was 48Z, and it tells you that only gold members have those bags, right? So you got one more clue that will enable you to kind of go and look at again your Get Fit members as well. All right, so you've got one person who have kind of gotten into it, and then it also tells you that the man got into the car plate that included number H42W, right? So I can go to maybe my driver's license and go and look at what the who owns that car as well. All right, so that's one clue that I have. Now, when we went back to the previous one, right, there were two clues that I have. So you had a person named Annabelle, and that person lived on Franklin Avenue. So I would let you play with the same query. All right. So instead of Northwestern Avenue, you can do Franklin Avenue and search for a person called Annabelle. All right. So I'll give you maybe a couple of minutes to play around with that. So in your previous query that we wrote, right, we got two witnesses. So we got the first witness who told us about a gunshot, right? And it tells me that I can export my data as a CSV and then use it separately and then look at it in my Excel file. All right, so here's a query that I got, which I downloaded in here, right? So I'll just keep this for reference. So there's only one decent transcript that I can go with. I have a gunshot wound, a man ran out, and he was had a get fit now gym bag, and the membership number started with 48Z. Only gold members have that bag, so now you at least have a clue. So either you can go back and investigate the previous clue where you had Annabelle who lived on Franklin Avenue, or you can go down and investigate the Get Fit Now gym bag. So it's up to you, right? So I'll give you a couple of minutes to play around and let me know if there are any questions. Anybody stuck somewhere? Let me do this query as well. I'll copy this, and the person was on Franklin Avenue. Again, you have quite a few people, but then there is only one person called Annabelle. So let's try to, instead of going through all of these things, let's try to filter just Annabelle itself, where we know that the person name has Annabelle in there. So we can do that. Again, we have to do something similar. Convert bar chart. We have name, and instead of doing equal to, I will say like, because the person has, because we are not doing a full match, and then you do give a percentage, which works. All right. So this allows us to kind of do a kind of a conditional piece. So instead of searching everywhere for Annabelle, I can just do Annabelle percentage, and it will allow me to kind of do kind of a wildcard matching, and I can immediately get to the transcript. So instead of going down all the list, I can just work through this. Right. So again, it kind of tells you that it says that somebody was working in the gym on the 9th. Right. So now you have two users or two witnesses telling you that go and investigate what happened on the 9th of January. Right. So again, let's. Are you guys with me on this so far, or are you stuck somewhere and you need any help with the SQL? Do you want me to copy the SQL that I'm writing on the chat window? All right. So my first query that I used was this. All right. The second query that I worked on was when I was trying to find the person from Northwestern Drive was here. And my last query that I'm working through, which was searching for people on Franklin Avenue, and person with Annabelle is here. So these are, sorry, I can paste this whole thing. Let me just remove the last part, and oops, above the character limit. And this is broken into two parts. Um, so here's the other part as well. All right. So, uh-oh. All right. So now everybody is asking me, both the witnesses are saying that, all right, let's go and look at um, the the gym membership. So we can look at, again, there are three things that we can look for. You have event check-ins. A lot of people like to do Facebook check-ins. So let's run and see what do we get. So again, you get a person ID, event name, and some dates. Uh, doesn't seem to be very helpful. Um, Now let's look at the other two queries, right? Get fit now, check in, right? So who came in and there? So I do see membership ID, check-in dates, check-in time, and checkout time as well. All right. So from the previous clue, we know that the person had a date of, or sorry, the membership number started with 48Z. So again, I'll let you kind of play around and see, how do you kind of query the membership ID that has 48Z, right? And that 48Z could be anywhere in the query itself, right? Either the beginning or the end. So again, I'll let you kind of play around and see if you can crack that query. I have quite a few users who just joined in. Um, Anybody who's just joined in and want to kind of catch up along, can you just put it in the chat window, hi, so I know uh, who those are, and if you have logins, or if you want a login, I can kind of share it with you. And you also have the membership details, which is now in the Get Fit Now member as well, right? So you can see the gold membership of the people and the IDs as well. All right. So again, so most likely you will have to kind of look at your check-ins and Get Fit Now member, because you know that the check-in happened on 9th of January. The person is a gold member, and his ID has a number called 48Z. All right. So again, based on what you wrote before, try to see if you are able to kind of crack this in. If not, I'll show you how to kind of write that again. Hey, Muskan. Let me, Kshitij, can you guys quickly register on the form? So I have your email. I don't want to put your email on the public chat. Uh, Let me paste the form again. Give me one moment. Right. So just register on this. I will give you. I have some spare login details. Uh, so just register again, and people who register now, I can give you the new login information and quickly walk you through where what we have done so far. And for others, if you find the answer, post it on the chat while I help some of our new joinees on the session as well. Just register your email. That should be good enough, and I can quickly send you the new email addresses. Hey Muskan and Kshitij, did you register your email? Because I didn't see it yet. Anybody else who doesn't have the login, I can quickly share one while people are solving it. Oh, let me paste the forms link again. Um, the link is on the chat window. Um, Let me share again. Yes, I will be going through all of these things and show you how to kind of set up, what are the different types of Azure SQL databases that you can configure, and what's the advantages of having serverless, how you configure. So I'll cover that, right? I just want you guys first to get comfortable with working through SQL and how some of these things work out, right? And then I'll let you guys play around with the system and kind of work out from there, right? And to kind of show you the database performance itself, I need to kind of show you some queries, right? So as you kind of work through the queries, you can see how you can auto tune some of these queries as well, and it will give you recommendations on how to kind of what tuning should it done and how it should kind of sequence the queries and everything itself. So a lot of the data has been designed for this purpose, and once you kind of play this, it becomes easier to know what you are now looking for, rather than just kind of dumping theory first and then kind of telling you, okay, here are the practical examples. I think let's start with the practical first and then kind of walk you through those things, so that you will know that how you can kind of work through the different options that are easily available in there and how to kind of take advantage of that. Hey, Muskan, Kshitij, Deepak, did you guys have? Are you guys able to register? All right. For those who have been following along, did you guys manage to get the person who was in the gym at that particular point in time? All right. So if you didn't manage, here's a query. I'll paste it at as well. So I have my from where I'm going to look at it from my get fit now member. I'm going to join it with the check-in dates because we know that the check-in happened on 9th of January. And then ID is like 48. So percentage 48Z, right? So the reason why you put percentages, it's like a wildcard character, so you can search anywhere itself, right? So this is the person that you need to kind of go and look at. uh, what happened? This the query. Doesn't matter what you run before, you always end up with some issues. All right, so I do have two people um, uh, who are potentially on that date, who had a membership ID, and of course, I can kind of look at his membership ID as well. And these two are the people who have there. Now I can again go back to their interviews and query for these people, and then see what answers do I get. So let me go and look at my interviews as well. Um, and I have two persons IDs. I can do a join as well. Um, what was this? All right, let me just run and see person ID. I have to find out the interview ID from there. Person ID and then run here. So login. Hold on. Let me give the login to the new folks. Give me one more moment. All right, your login is on portal.azure.com. Right. Let me see. I posted the link earlier. Uh, the YouTube one is messing it up. Right. So once you get into the credentials, just start, and then you will see the SQL database, which will be Silver Murder Mystery Silver, and then use your SQL credentials to log in. All right. So once you kind of play around with this, you will find that in the interview, you will find the culprit, and the culprit essentially was Jeremy Bowers, and he tells you that he was hired by a woman. So essentially, you found the culprit who did it. But he said that, okay, I didn't essentially do it. I was asked to do by somebody else. And then essentially, the idea is that I want you to go back and, play around again with that data set and find out who that person who has red hair and drives a Tesla model and see if you are able to kind of find that specific person in there. So I'll let you guys play around, and while others who are getting started, let me show you. Once you log in, what can you expect? All right. So once you log in, you will be able to see SQL databases. If you don't, and on the top, just search for SQL databases and click on the services option. So once you click on SQL databases, you will see one database that has been assigned to you, and what you should be using is the Silver data. Now, once you get in here, you can configure the firewall. I've kind of already configured the firewall for you guys. You jump it into the query editor and use the SQL username and password to get started. Right, so I'm going to use my login. Are you guys with me on this so far? All right. This will essentially get you into the query portal where you can start querying it. Of course, you can use other tools to connect directly to the database itself. But for now, we are going to essentially work through the query editor so that it's relatively easy to get started with, and you don't have to follow up. Have to install other things as well. So what you have on your left hand side is a bunch of tables, and the idea is that, hey, there's a murder that has occurred in SQL City because you're doing it in SQL. But now you have to go find out, what has happened. So our first database that we went through was the crime scene report, where we selected the top 1,000 rows, and we found that, okay, what are some of the date and types, description and city that are available, and essentially you want to look at a murder that happened in the SQL City itself. So the way you end up doing that, it is, are you guys familiar with SQL? Kshitij, Deepak, Muskan, are you guys comfortable with SQL, or this is the first time you're using it? Okay, first time. Okay, just give me one moment. Um, Again, for those who are already ahead, try to find the person who has the red hair, and once you know, let me know in the chat, and then in the meanwhile, I'll try to get others up to the same page. So SQL essentially is a language for querying databases. So what you end up doing is write a bunch of statements which tells the database what you are looking for itself. So over here, your typical select or when you want to kind of get the data out, you essentially start writing your select SQL, right? So your select essentially tells the database is select certain rows that meet a certain criteria. All right. So over here, what we are saying is select top 1,000 rows. Star means show all the all the columns that are there in this particular database table. Right. So our database is silver. Our schema over here is that of a delta, and then the table that I'm querying it is the crime scene report. So when you run this, essentially you will see. Hold on. Um, you will see that the first 1,000 rows are essentially queried for you, and you are able to kind of work through that. But this is not essentially what you are looking for. What you're looking for is that there's a murder that has happened. So I'm going to just do select start, and I will put a condition which says where. You just need to convert your data. Now, typically when you query it, you don't have to convert the data, but there was a bug in my system and all the data kind of loaded as varchar, uh, which is the reason why I'm doing it this way. But typically this is not how you would write your query. All right, so your type is murder, and again you need to convert. Your city is SQL city. So now what you're telling your database is like, okay, I don't need all the rows. Just tell me rows where a murder happened, and the murder happened in SQL City. All right. So you will see a lot of these things where it's showing you murder, and then you will see one thing which is saying that, all right, the security footage is showing two people who are on Northwestern Drive, and a second person called Annabelle who lives in the Franklin Avenue. All right. So now go out and query the person who lives on Northwestern Drive, and essentially, do the same thing for Annabelle. That will essentially tell you what the next steps are and where the person is. All right, you guys with me so far? Anybody who has solved the problem? All right. So just play around with your data sets, and what we'll do is, after a few minutes, let's see if anybody has cracked the problem. If not, then I'll show you the answer, and then what we'll do is, cover come some of the theoretical aspect of, what you have been doing on the database so far. Right. So I'll give you another 5 minutes to play. If you get stuck, leave a note in the chat window. I can respond to those messages. All good. Priyanka, you have the answer. Any doubts, anyone? Any questions? The stream is very quiet. Are you guys able to solve it? How are you guys doing on the problem? Are you guys still around or still stuck? Do you want a hint to start solving? Do you want a hint to start solving? Any questions, any doubts, anyone? All right. Let me give you one hint of identifying the person. Um, so, from your driver license, right? So, in your driver license, if you query, right, you see age, height, eye color, hair color, gender, plate, car make, car model, right? So, what you all need is from one of the clues, right? You have, I'll paste this query as well. You have your gender, where you know the person is a female. You know the person's hair color is red. You know the person drives a Tesla, and it's a Model S. And the height is between 64 and 68, right? Because that's how it looks like, how the heights are, right? So now if you run this, right? What did I miss now? Ah, right. You will get these three license IDs in here. All right, so that's so one of these person is the crook. So now find out, look at your check-in details, look at your annual income, see who that person is, because we know that the person is a rich woman. So again, query and find out uh, who that. There's nothing in income. All right. So nothing to do with income. I think this should be sufficient enough for you to know who checked in at what point and who's the person. So let me paste this query in the chat window, so you guys can play around. No, all right, I can't paste the whole thing, so let me paste it in two part. What we did was, essentially, I kind of broke the problem into two parts. What it allowed us to do is, you have a person playing around, and then, I wanted you to try out and see if you are able to join and play around with the queries, and run them and see if you get any different answer. So that's what I was kind of working through. So now I've given you who the license ID is. All right. So now you know the top three people who are with that ID. All right, another 5 more minutes, and then let's move on to the other parts of the Azure SQL database, and then let's see all the data that we have collected, how we can kind of make use of that. Ashutosh, for you, as you kind of work through this, right? Um, for SQL projects, typically SQL, if you do get it in the interview and others, typically people will ask you questions on a database or something. They'll give you a puzzle, they'll give you a question, which will kind of involve some of these ideas that you're learning through. How you can join, how you can group, how you can do a self join to some of these tables as well, and then you kind of get creative with that. So that's how people kind of look at it from a database perspective. So again, there are a lot of resources out there to kind of practice your SQL queries as well. And I would say at least work through some of those coding camps. I don't want to recommend anything in particular, but all those coding camps have SQL queries that you can practice on, which are typically asked in the interviews as well. And once you are able to do that, all of these things will come very, very naturally to you. For projects itself, typically your SQL comes in handy in two places. One is if you're going for a web development kind of role, then they'll of course ask you SQL and other things. In my company, we do ask SQL for people who are joining as data engineers, data scientists, or data analyst itself, because that's a key part of your day-to-day activity, where instead of waiting for somebody to give the data to you, you can essentially write SQLs and get your answers, or get your data right away that could be used for reporting or dashboarding as well. All right. Anybody who has the answer? No, so all you have to do is make sure you are converting your SSN as well, because like I mentioned, right, there was a bug in the code and everything got loaded as varchar, which was kind of unfortunate. So you'll have to kind of work through that. Okay. Um, shall we move on to the next part? Yep, Miranda. That is correct. Good job, Priyanka. You want to paste your solution, Priyanka, on the chat? Priyanka, if you can paste your query, that would be wonderful. Okay. So while Priyanka praised the thing, so now what we are going to look at it is, what are the different types of Azure SQL databases that we have, right? So now, as you kind of work through your databases, right? There are a lot of different options and a lot of different flavors in there. So for today, we are just going to focus on Azure SQL. So typically, you can run Azure SQL Server in three different formats, right? You can get your own SQL, server, just like you would run it on prem. Is you can run it on the virtual machine itself, right? But everything that I think for people who attended the session last time around, you have to. So this is basically your infrastructure as a service. You will get your hardware from Azure, right? Azure will make sure that it's available to you. Everything that's above that, which is your operating system, your SQL server, you will have to maintain and operate, update it. So if there are patches on the operating system, you'll have to do that. Patches on the SQL server, you'll have to do that. You'll do your own monitoring itself, but it gives you full control over how many cores you are running it on, what memories you are running it on, and of course the license that's required to run the SQL server. But of course you can do that. So that's one option that's available, which is kind of a very traditional way in which a lot of companies used to work now, right? You'll have your machine hardware and you will essentially run your systems on top of that. The next one, when you want to do is you will say that, okay, Azure, you kind of manage the hardware and the operating system. You do get a server, but in some of these things they will help you manage it as well, right? So it's kind of a managed instance in itself. And the last one is you just say that you get a database, right? So Azure will manage the SQL server, the operating system. You can kind of tune what performance you're looking at, and then it will give you monitoring and intelligence that is associated with that, which is what we are doing today, right? So what we are working on today is the Azure SQL database, where everything is managed by Azure itself, right? It allows you to scale elastically up and down as required. They also have these thing where they have this thing called hyperscale, where the compute and storage are kind of separated out. I won't go into the details of there. Later on I'll send you some of the links that you can use to kind of understand what hyperscale is there. But over there you can kind of scale to extremely large databases to work with. Now, again, all of these is simple in there. But when we kind of work through Azure SQL databases, right? So let me actually show you on the Azure portal itself of how to kind of go about configuring some of these things itself. So this is your Azure SQL server, and then that server can have multiple different databases itself, right? So I have my database, and then uh, you know essentially when you log in, again, all of you guys have access to this, so you will be able to kind of work through some of these things. So let's do a configuration. Right now, configuration allows me for different types of system, and over here you will notice that I had kind of kept it as a serverless, right? And when I kind of move it as a serverless, what it means that let me just scroll down a little bit. All right, so what it does is that it kind of says that I can configure up to 40 virtual cores. Right, so each two cores is, typically think of it as one physical core as two virtual cores. So each core has two threads, so that's how they kind of work through that. So I configured it as six maximum cores, right? So what happens in this is at any point in time it's going to scale up and down as required, right? So if there is a lot of load that's coming in, it's going to scale up to 6. That's max, which is what I've configured. But minimum, it will keep to about about 3/4 of a core. It will keep it ready. The other thing that is there in these sort of configuration is that if there is nothing that's happening, it will pause, right? So there will be no cost associated with you anything beyond the storage. So for these sort of systems where you don't know what your load is, or where you have an unpredictable load, these sort of environments can help you to configure it in a much better way. There's of course an alternative approach where you can say that, okay, I don't want serverless because I'm paying for the compute and the queries that get costed. I can pre-provision it, right? So pre-provision means that I will define how much performance it's there and what is the max data size that I'm going to allocate with. Now you can see that as I keep scaling my core, the cost on my right hand side kind of increases proportionally, which means that even if I'm not using anything, right, which is my minimum 2 core, I'm still paying about 418 US dollars per month, right? But if I go to a serverless model, right, depending on how much load that comes in, that cost will kind of scale up accordingly to that as well. So a lot of cloud companies have started to do something similar, where essentially all of the stuff becomes serverless, and all you are doing is configuring where the cloud kind of essentially manages it, and you essentially end up the paying for the amount of queries that you end up doing as well. So there are pros and cons associated with it. In my day to day, we have a serverless version of it. It kind of is extremely cost efficient and kind of works out in a much better way. Now there are other options as well, where you can kind of go into hyperscale or business critical options, where it will allow you to kind of do kind of tell very specifically how much compute do you want, how much storage do you want, and kind of fine tune those requirements as well. There are some of these older options as well, where again you can kind of say that, okay, how many DTUs that are required, which is essentially a combination of both memory and server. And that's a kind of a metric that you kind of go work with, and then it says that, all right, I'll give you something that's very very basic to work with. So for this example, where I'm just doing a kind of a play scenario, I can end up paying just $5 and kind of be done with it. But over here, there's no scale that I'm going to get through with this. Of course, I can kind of keep tuning my DTUs depending on how much scale and volume that I'm going to be looking at, to all the way up to premium, where I get up to 4,000 DTUs, which is again a combination of memory and processor, which is what we kind of look at. And there are a lot of different calculators available for you, which will help you kind of determine what DTU you essentially look at. Any questions on this so far? In the meanwhile, let me paste the links that can help you to kind of read more about Azure SQL databases, just what I kind of shared with you guys, and kind of learn more as you go along. All right. Now you can also have a failover policy in here. For this one, I have not done anything because I've kind of not allowed for geo replication. Just last week, if you had noticed, Google servers had gone down. So in a similar scenario, right, when one of the region goes down, your data kind of automatically fails over to a different region. So you can kind of have redundancies in there, where the database will be replicated across multiple regions, and you can kind of configure that. So again, you don't have to kind of worry about the specifics of it. All you do is prepare a configuration for failover, and once you set that up, that's good to go. Are you guys with me so far? On our side, we can configure and choose the database. Yes, I mean, right now you guys can play around with the configuration, do whatever you want. Don't put me on a high cost bucket, otherwise I'll end up paying a huge Azure bill. But yeah, feel free to play around on those aspects and work through that. The other one that we have is, as we kind of work through this, right, I could set up audits as well. I kind of disabled auditing. I have a basic auditing that's going on, where I can see who was kind of working through that, what's happening on the databases, and kind of some of the sessions associated with that. So I'm not going to go over the details, but just kind of detail on all the queries that get logged. All of that can be kind of looked at as well. The other key one that I wanted to kind of talk about was all this data discovery and classification. Now, you notice that we had social security numbers, we had cities, we had very very personal identifiers that were available in there. Now, as you kind of set it up, all of this is kind of comes out of the box for you. where now if you click on which are the data that's there, right? So it says that in the crime scene report, there's a contact information. It says that the data level is confidential. Now I could select that. There is also, it says that, hey, you have SSN number, and it tells you, it will kind of violate all your GDPR requirements. So it knows specific patterns in your data, and it's already warning you that, hey, you can mask all of this information, and just with a click of a button, all of that data can get masked as well. So it's going to kind of mark that data as confidential, and I can very very quickly kind of work through some of these things, right? So now my data essentially has some sort of sensitivity information in there. But you might say, hey, what use, okay, hold on, let me save this. What use is there if anybody can very quickly kind of validate it as well? Now I can kind of essentially create a lot of masks that are associated with these data sets, and now it tells me that, hey, where is that data, how is that data flowing in, and you can kind of keep an audit trail of who pulled out the data and where all where does it flow through that process. Now I can create masks of the data as well. I don't know. Typically, it kind of immediately gives me what data to mask, and it tells in my crime scene report. Sorry, I had my driver license where I had no, sorry. In my person, I had SSN, and it will tell me how I want to kind of mask that number as well, right? So it's going to help me create masks so that people who don't have access to the raw data are not going to be able to see this data set, right? So did I add the mask? So anybody who queries the data, who is not kind of configured to kind of view the dynamic mask, will not be able to see these things. So I think for all of you guys, I have kind of not kept you guys in there. So let's just quickly query this data again to see if we are able to query that data. I think I might be set up as admin. Let me just quickly see. Nope, I think all of you are set up as admin. Let me use one of your usernames. We change the login. Yep. So now you can see that if I'm not an admin, I won't be able to see the SSN number, right? By default, is showing up as 0. So if you're not enabled onto any of these masks, then essentially you can hide all of this information so that you can prevent your personal information from going, or falling into wrong hands as well. So this is one way of to kind of work through dynamic masking and be able to kind of qualify, set up your data classification guidelines as well. All right. Any questions on this so far from what I've covered? Now, once I've configured this, right, you won't be able to run those queries. And that was one of the reasons why I kind of wanted to do this later on, so that now you can see how I can prevent people from kind of accessing SSN and essentially preventing the wrong information falling, or the information falling into the wrong hands. All right. So why would I choose SQL Pass if you had to migrate from Pass is very expensive. Priyanka, so the way we kind of work through this, right? So it comes at a cost of doing management, right? So if you have if you work through some of the databases, and I'll give you my personal example. I work for a company called Property Guru. In a lot of those scenarios, we do go with pass based offerings where the complete management is done by the cloud provider, and all we do is provide the data. right? So for us, it kind of helps my data team to be much more productive. So instead of us being focusing on managing the patches, managing the SQL, monitoring the queries, monitoring the performance of the queries, we are now focusing on driving more of those results. So it's again a cost benefit analysis of where you want to kind of spend your time on, and working through that, right? Working through virtual machine means that you have to kind of make sure your applications are set up properly. Again, if you have a team that's managing that infrastructure, that's perfectly well and fine. But it's cost of opex versus capex, which often kind of comes into the discussion of how people want to kind of manage some of these things as well. So it's completely up to you of how you kind of work through this. We kind of work through a serverless thing, and essentially our cost has come down from a point where we used to have a database on a virtual machine, to now a serverless option, which kind of essentially we essentially pay per query plus the storage of the data, and it works out to be much cheaper for us, even when we had a SQL server on machine. So I think it varies from case to case, and what your use cases are, and how do you kind of work through some of those as well. Yes, these are the other question is, oh, I did see Power BI preview in all of these things. Am I be able to use it? Yeah, you can configure your Power BI on top of it, and all this data you can set it up as well. I've not kind of done this yet, but something that you can of course play around it with and get started as well. So all of these are something that you will be able to use, including integration with Power Apps and Power Automate as well. Again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but something that you can set up where your SQL database can become part of your Power Apps workflow as well. SQL on Azure VM versus SQL PaaS. Priyanka, did I answer your question? So we did look at masking, and then you can set up mask for whatever you think is appropriate. And now we have also done essentially our data classification that helps me map how the data is flowing in through different levels as well. All right. Uh, Now data encryption, right? So of course I have always keep this on. And again, you can do multiple levels of encryption where the key is managed by Azure, key is managed by the user. There's another option where you can do a hybrid option where one part of the key is managed by Azure, the other part of key is managed by you. So you have essentially two levels of encryption itself. So if anybody does get access to the Azure hardware, nobody is able to kind of see through this database as well. Now let's look at some of the performance tuning as well, right? So now, as you guys played around with this data set, what it was doing on the back end, it was kind of telling me, which queries were working out to be more expensive, which were, which consumed a lot of resources as well, right? So this allows me to kind of further tune the queries. I'm surprised I didn't get anything in there. Yep. So I had a few queries that were running that took a very long time, and then I can go back and look at what was happening in those queries as well, and what took it so much time, right? So this becomes very useful to kind of see two things where it becomes useful. One is people who write very bad queries. You can and you'll be surprised at that. You can always go back and educate them. Is like, hey, there are better ways to write performant queries itself. Or the other way could be is like, hey, I could look at recommendations on what it could be done. Surprisingly, there are no, but typically there are some recommendations that comes on a regular basis as well, and it will tell you on what values to create index on, or what index you should be dropping, and kind of work through some of these things. Surprisingly, I did wanted to show you that, person ID, I didn't create an index on it, but it does should be showing up on some of these options as well. Um, it's not showing up right now. Um, Sometimes some of these can be pretty weird. Um, so this is looking at the storage and what it was doing. Ah, anyway, so there are no, surprisingly, there is no tuning recommendations that are available, besides saying that, hey, do some sort of a planning. So before a query is run, it's going to plan out how it's going to run and create some indexes in there. So these are some of the default it's there. I'm not going to kind of work through that, just kind of leave it as inherent from index itself. Um, then this is essentially showing you all the queries and which one of them were some of the most expensive on that as well. So that kind of covers how you kind of look at tuning, configuring the database, and working through confidential data that are kind of available out of the box when you use kind of these managed SQL kind of approaches in Azure. Any questions on this so far? Any doubts? Any questions? Did you guys like the game? Work through a quick run through of the theoretical aspects of the SQL database. So at least now what is Azure SQL, and essentially how do you go about and playing with that. Um, Anything else that you have any queries on? On the query performance insights, as you kind of run through queries itself, it will kind of show you, which is one of the most expensive query for you, right? So, these are the top 5 queries where it took the most time, and how many executions that happened, right? So I think this is more of a log kind of thing. So there's nothing much to kind of work through this. And the other one that we had was kind of just unmasking thing, which I kind of ran. So when you kind of unmask it, it takes some time. And then you have uh, again, this is where I was inserting the data. Again, nothing major in there. Again, most of these are insert type of things. So none of your queries kind of showed up, despite the fact that we are kind of running in, turned out to be very, very expensive. And that's one of the reasons why you don't see them there as well. Priyanka, when you say how do you do profiling, what sort of profiling are you referring to? Is it the data discovery profile or the performance tuning profiling? Oh, as in, how the queries get broken down into, how it's planning. In this example, I don't have a way to kind of show this. The other way is, I could look up in the logs, but I didn't enable logs, so I didn't kind of set that up. Otherwise, that's something that you can go back and look at, how the queries were broken down, specifically because I was asking you to do the joins, and some of those joins can be very, very expensive, and that's what I wanted to show. But I didn't set that up, so I won't be able to show much details in there. So at the moment, this is all you get. All right. Any other queries from anyone? I hope this was useful for all of you guys. We ended up playing a small game, which was a murder mystery, but at the same time, you learned, how this essentially works on Azure SQL, and how I ended up configuring the game, to kind of work through different aspects of the Azure SQL database that was managed by Azure. Any other questions? I was hoping there will be more insights coming in, because whenever I tried to run this, uh, the performance kind of showed me some of the expensive joins. Unfortunately, none of you guys um, were running very expensive queries. So, anyways, I think we'll end the session. If there are no other questions, I'll end the session now. I will keep the accounts active for another 30 minutes. So you guys can, of course, go back and run any queries or play around with the Azure SQL database. In next 30 minutes, I will remove your logins, and you won't be able to log in any further on this. Um, Index, especially for some of the key columns, you will essentially need it. Um but creating too many indices can also hamper performance, because it needs to store all those values. So of course, if you have a unique identifier for the column, which can be an SSN or a unique ID as well, that can link up to columns, that can certainly speed up your queries as well. So yeah, so not necessary, it will benefit as well. All right, so I think we'll end the session here. If you liked it, like this session, hit the like on the YouTube. We'll be doing a lot more of these sessions next year. So hit subscribe so you know when the next session is being scheduled, or subscribe to our Meetup channel, which is on the meetup.com. And I hope to see you guys in the future sessions as well. And again, if you have any feedback, feel free to let me know. I would be more than happy to kind of work and improve through that. So thank you all for joining in. Don't forget to subscribe or hit the like button on YouTube. And yep, and wish you guys a happy new year, and see you guys all next year. Oh, how to save the queries on your queries itself, right? On your query editor. Um, Let me just quickly show you. On your query editor, when you write a query, there's an option to save a query, and then kind of work through that. Oh, because essentially, this is kind of a web-based version, which is a kind of a preview mode. Uh, so it doesn't save anything on the portal itself, right? So technically, this should have been worked through your other ways to kind of access it. But for sake of simplicity and the demo purpose, we kind of went through the web review as well. So just make sure you save your query and export your data. All right. So don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button on my YouTube. And I will see you guys next year. The next session that I'm thinking of is doing machine learning on SQL Server. I don't know, guys, if you guys are interested in it. We can certainly expand on your learnings on SQL and kind of teach you how to build very, very simple ML models on SQL Server itself. Connie, I think if you want to save, the only way to save it is downloading it. There's no other way to save it beyond that. Um, because this is kind of working as a web version, there's nothing to save on the web. But I'll let you kind of play around it for another 30 minutes. So don't be in a rush to kind of finish it. You can of course play around and work through the scenarios. All right. Thank you all. I hope it was a useful session for all of you guys working through Azure SQL and learning through some of these things. It's not that complicated as you eventually saw. A lot of these are just simple things. And once you kind of get comfortable with some of these things, these are as equivalent of working through any SQL databases that you know of. Yes, and in January we will have an Azure boot camp as well, which is most likely going to turn up as a full day event. So let me paste my meetup link. That is on the Azure Microsoft AI ML community, so you know where to go and do up as well. So here's the link. Um to subscribe. Again, there are going to be a lot of fun events in there. Besides, we are planning for some hands-on session as well, just like what we did here. Just come. The Azure logins and others will be kind of given to you, and you can go out and work from there. Thanks, Priyanka. All right. I'll see you guys later, and have a wonderful year ahead. Stay safe, everyone. Bye bye.